I was gonna like be like, man, the Gruffalo, R.I.P. I was gonna sprinkle it in, that cracker actor. Which, by
Okay.
the way,
Yeah.
terrible way. You go on Google, you look up Robbie Coltrane. It says Harry Potter and Cracker actor. And if you don't know that Cracker was a longtime TV show in the UK, it is hilarious.
I was. That's how
This
I
man
was
is
like.
dead and they're insulting him.
It took me a little
Well,
while to kind of because I was looking up his filmography, and yeah, he won three back-to-back BAFTAs for Best Actor, the British Television Academy, and a feat that
Wow.
apparently only was matched by Michael Gambon. The two co-starred in the Harry Potter franchise. Of course, one Dumbledore, the other Hagrid. So yeah, I mean, he had a whole career well before he got the role for Hagrid, and it wasn't. I actually watched an interview where they asked him like, well, how did you first, find out about this and like for the role of Hagrid, and he was like, well, there were some I forget who he said told him, but he's like a friend or somebody like said, hey, have you read the script for this new Harry Potter thing? They're looking for an all English cast, and I remember Robin. Not I remember personally, but I remember watching something else recently where they talked about how Robin Williams was publicly campaigning for the role of Hagrid for a long time, but they wanted somebody who was British. They wanted an all-British
I'm
cast,
really glad
and
it wasn't him.
in hindsight, yes. But in essence, yeah. I mean, Robbie Coltrane read for the role, and he always comes across as somebody in interviews or like you see the behind-the-scenes stuff for Hagrid and Harry Potter, that he's this very humble person who
Yeah.
was just as much in awe of like the big set pieces and like the magical because there are a lot of practical effects in the Harry Potter
Sure.
franchise, especially in the earlier movies. So you walk into like the Great Hall and it's just as majestic to stand in as it is on camera on screen. So he
Yeah.
was just
And
that was a lot of how he experienced the
his
whole
humble
thing.
attitude was part of his charm and his appeal. I mean, to even imagine Robin Williams in that role, it would just become about Robin Williams. And
Right.
you could just feel through his performance as Hagrid that he was there making the kids comfortable, which is Hagrid's role too. Um, I just he was you could feel his friendliness through the screen, and his intention, which was to be sort of a protector and this affectionate but giant hulking mass of a man. I mean, it's a great character, and I think he honored the character in the book. He's what people imagined, I think.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Like the role of Hagrid is something that will forever be associated with Robbie Coltrane. And watching the behind the scenes stuff, it was kind of like Darth Vader in the sense that the performance wasn't just one person. He was the one doing all the work for when the close-up shots and like they're seeing him talking, but then sort of some of the wide shots and when you don't necessarily need to see his face, maybe shooting from behind, they actually had somebody who's legitimately like the size of what Hagrid is meant to be, and even they put that person into like a big bodysuit to kind of like match the shape of what Robbie Coltrane would look like dressed up as Hagrid, and um, so it was a mix of both. It wasn't like they put him on stilts. Maybe on occasion they might have, but for the most part it was like they had a body double for some shots, and then a lot of
Hmm.
times they were shooting stuff where he's sort of pretending that Harry's standing next to him because they're shooting him in front of a green screen, or they're gonna shoot Harry
They're
Potter
doing
or
like
whatever other
forced
character.
perspective kind of stuff.
Yeah, like the forced perspective, yeah, or like straight up without even forcing it within the camera. Like,
Yeah,
maybe they talked about how using
compositing.
different focal lengths of camera, you can kind of get away with it sometimes. It was like a dirty over the shoulder shot to like make the person in the background look further away and smaller. But sometimes they just simply had to do it as like a VFX shot with multiple plates. But at any rate, I mean, like you have to sit through makeup and everything for hours, and then you go and do all this work, and sometimes you're just acting against really like a green screen.
Yeah.
So, he was committed. And that wasn't. This is an image from the movie Buddy that he did back in the 90s. So again, he did a lot of other stuff that people don't really know about, and I think now that he's no longer with us, I think this is as good a time as any to go back and look at Robbie Coltrane's career as not just the person who played Hagrid, and obviously that's I think he's most well known for and will forever be known for, but he did a lot of other stuff. Like here's a picture from Cracker. This is him playing this very sly detective who had a lot of attitude to give out, but he was really good at his job. I don't even know if he was a detective. I think he was like a consultant. I mentioned in the pre-show we
He
were
was a consultant.
it was like
Yeah.
Castle almost, like like that show that ran on ABC for a while. He
Yeah.
was kind of like the in-house consultant working with the police force, and like Helen Mirren is on the show. They had a lot of like big time like people who went on to become these big British movie stars started on these kind of shows. But he was a character actor. He never quite achieved like the same level of stardom as a Helen Mirren, but he also starred in a movie in the UK that um this is James Bond, by the way, but like he started in a different movie where Tilda Swinton got her start. So, like you look at, I'm sure like people down in the years to come, they're gonna go back and look at the filmography of all, some of these other actors, like I just mentioned the names of, and they're gonna find Robbie Coltrane, Robbie Coltrane, Robbie Coltrane. You're like,
It's
oh my God, like,
interesting. There's people
yeah.
who have had incredible careers and they pop up all over the place in some of these fantastic movies, and you don't think of them as the huge, uh, you know, celebrity movie stars, but every
Mhm.
time they pop up, you're happy to see them, and then you look at their filmography at after a 30-year career or longer, and they've been part of some cultural moments and they've been around. Steve Buscemi and Christopher Walken are two that come to mind where it's just like they every time you see them, it's kind of a treat. And you go back and you go, that I didn't even realize that they were also in this. But
Yeah.
going back a long time, those guys, these character actors who can convincingly bring somebody to life, like Hagrid, or I don't even know what I'm looking at here, but it's a completely
He
different
he
person.
played a Russian mobster Zhukovsky in the
Yeah.
Pierce Brosnan
Wow.
iteration of Bond. So he was
Yeah.
first in GoldenEye, and then I think a couple of movies later in The World Is Not Enough, he came back again. He has a history with his Bond, with Brosnan's Bond, where
Mm.
they ran into each other in the past. Bond shot out his knee, so they sort of have this like at odds relationship, like a love-hate thing, where they won't kill each other, but they will like they're not particularly friendly when they're in front of each other. Like literally in this scene, he like is shooting the couch where Bond is sitting around him just to kind of threaten him casually, and the
We're the
conversation just
adversary.
continues. It's just
I love those relationships. That's really
yeah.
cool. Well, as we've said here, we'll do a full-on tribute to Robbie Coltrane, as we've done for a lot of other great people that we've lost in the last year. Be sure to check some of those out. We call those Oh So Memorable, and we put a lot of heart and a lot of work into those, because we want to respect the legacies of these people who have become our friends through the screen.
Yeah.
I did have a question before we finish up because
Sure.
it's in the graphic, and I did want to ask. What was I mean, and you could say Hagrid because again, that was something that most everybody knew about. But what was your favorite Robbie Coltrane? Or like, how would you remember him when somebody brings up the name Robbie Coltrane? How would you remember him?
I think this entire generation is gonna remember him mostly as Hagrid. We got these
Yeah.
people who are they've read and reread Harry Potter 6,000 times, and they watch the movies religiously, and it's just he also did such a wonderful job with that character. I can't imagine anybody else being it
Mhm.
not well.
Yeah, Roland?
Yeah, no, I definitely have to agree. Like that was how I was introduced to him. So of course, my first impression is always going to be like, oh, that's Hagrid. That's great. He doesn't have his beard or his hair or his giant stature, but that's Hagrid
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Even though he kind of submerges himself in these crazy roles before and after. So, but yeah, deep in my heart, it will always be that way. What about you, Dan? Are you feeling the same way? Kind of the
Yeah, I have to lean that way because again, I've seen him more as Hagrid than anything else.
yeah.
And it's like when the news came out. I mean, he hasn't been in good health for some time. Even when you look back at the recent reunion special that they did, Hagrid, well, call him Hagrid, Robbie Coltrane, he looked like he wasn't in great health, and he said something along the lines of, in 15 years, the great thing about Harry Potter is in 15 years time our kids will be showing it to their kids, and Hagrid will live on. I may not be around in 15 years, but Hagrid and the memory of that character will be. And in hindsight, there's a certain is certain tragedy and it's poetic in a certain, and then like you look at that and you tear up. But really, Hagrid was like, I watch at least one Harry Potter movie a year, right? Like everybody does. I mean, I feel like everybody does. But in any Harry Potter movie, I feel like if you don't see Hagrid, it doesn't feel like a Harry Potter movie. In fact, like one of the reasons why kind of sort of fell out of love with the franchise in its latter movies, like when they got darker and darker, was because you saw less and less of Hagrid, and then like there's a certain, like there was this charm to the character that Robbie Coltrane brought, which
Yeah.
and it's because of who he was as a person, not just who he was playing on screen. You watch some of the behind the scenes stuff, and like he's making everybody laugh. Like he's one of those people. He's in the room, you feel his presence, and he lights up the room. So to me,
And I think
that's why I
think
remember him.
that's something that a lot of these people that we do tributes to have in common is, their presence can be felt beyond the screen. And for some of these people, these big stars, they are the character, and then they stop, they cut, and that warmth doesn't necessarily stick around. It takes a special person to have that carry beyond, in between takes.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Bob Saget passed away. Like everybody who remembered him from Full House was like a collective, like, God, like, no, you maybe call him America's dad, maybe you don't, but like it's like Hagrid felt that way. Like he was that person that everybody who grew up on these movies, like he could always rely on him. There's a scene in Harry Potter where like they first bring up the concept of mudbloods and Hermione's crying and Hagrid consoles her, and it's just like and then those kids back then, like I'm going to call them kids, like they're probably even older than us at this point, like the most of us at least, but yeah, like they were 8 and 11 years old, and when you're on a movie set of the scale of these Harry Potter films, like you're shooting for months on end, you're seeing more of the people you're working with on set than you are even your own family members. It's to have somebody like a Robbie Coltrane there, I think is wonderful, and that presence will be missed. So
Absolutely.
so
Well, do we still have time to talk about She-Hulk?
we do, but before we do that, I did want to, we put together, I mean, we are going to have an also memorable tribute for Robbie Coltrane in the coming days, but I put together like a really short little kind of like, let's take a look back at who he was and, the
Sure.
wonderful work that he did. So we could take a look at that before we jump into She-Hulk.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Today, we acknowledge a really terrible loss.
Who are you?
Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts.
Hagrid is bringing him.
Do you think it wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this?
Ah, Professor, I would trust Hagrid with my life.
You'll ride with Hagrid.
I brought you here 16 years ago when you were no bigger than a bow truckle. Seems only right that I should be the one to take you away now. Hello, Harry.
Hi, Hagrid. Whoa!
Madden Harry? You wouldn't be talking about me now, would you? I remember when I first met you all. Biggest bunch of misfits I ever set eyes on. Happy birthday. Suppose you're reminded of myself a little.
Isn't he beautiful? Oh, bless him, look, he knows his mummy. Hello, Harry.
Thanks, Hagrid.
I'd just like to say thanks.
I want it understood, Cornelius, that Hagrid has my full confidence.
Rubius Hagrid. Sorry I'm late. I got a real treat for you today. Yes! No. Harry? No! What are you doing here?
Seriously misunderstood creatures spiders are.
He's completely harmless, just like I said.
Go on, I'm with you. I'm with you now. Harry.
There, Hagrid. It's not really goodbye after all.
I'll not be here, sadly, but...
There's no Hogwarts without you, Hagrid.
but Hagrid will. Yes.